Good morning. I am Shilpa Wagh. I am a SEBI registered investment advisor. I operate from Mumbai. I am associated with this wonderful ecosystem, which is designed specially for families with special need children, and we call it Plan Special Needs. And we have a lot of webinars and programs under this ecosystem to help families to take care of their children in a more effective way. And today we are going to discuss one very important topic, which are the 8 actionable important items which a family should be actually getting into so that their special need child is taken care. And we have today with us is Mr. Jitendra Solanki, who is a founder of Plan Special Needs, and he is also CTEP. So he is also certified, he's a chartered trust and estate planner. So he will be guiding us through all the actionable items, which includes financial planning, which includes estate planning. And I'm sure we'll have a wonderful interactive sessions. So please feel free to type in your questions in the chat box as we are proceeding. And let's make the best of it. We have a good 1.5 hours with us, and we have a lot to cover. So let's begin. So let's welcome Jitendra. Welcome to this webinar.
Hi Shilpa, good morning and good morning to all the participants, parents, special educators and professionals who are. Um, we have been doing these webinars on different aspects of special needs children families, and yes, today also is a very important aspect wherein we are going to cover right from the beginning to the end what are those 8 actionable points uh, on which a special needs child family has to focus on or has to plan to ensure that the special needs child future is secure.
Please visit our website www.planspecialneeds.com for more information about what all activities we are doing. So now let's start with our subject, the 8 actionables which are most important. Okay. Um, let us start with the first of the action, which is getting the disability certificate. I'm sure all the parents are must have tried, or they have the experience of obtaining it, or those who are not having it. Let's talk a little bit more about disability certificate. So, Jitendra, can we start with like what is this disability certificate and why is it so important for us to get this disability certificate for our child?
Yeah, so the first aspect for any special needs child family or the first actionable is getting a disability certificate. Now, why a disability certificate is important? See, whatever disability the child has, I'm just naming it disability because we're talking about disability certificate. Now, there are certain benefits which are provided by the government. There are certain aspects, there are certain legal issues which needs to be addressed in the future. And then at any point of time when you have to disclose that your child is disabled, then you need a document which can show or which can prove the child disability. And specifically for that, a disability certificate is required. Uh, now, what are the important aspects in disability certificate? As I said, one, you need to prove that your child has disability and to what extent, because disability has got a range from 40% to 100%. So that you need to prove for availing any kind of benefit. Specifically for that, the disability certificate is required.
Okay, so disability certificate. So when you get the certificate, what all is contained in that certificate? What all is written in that certificate?
So when a disability certificate is given, I'm sorry, I'm not able to share those slides because at the last moment I have to do it from my mobile. But I'll be speaking on and I'll be sharing the presentation later. Now the disability certificate mainly has the content that it contains the name. It tells you the type of disability, whether it's an ADHD, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, or any other disability. It mentions that disability. It mentions the percentage percentage of disability, whether it's 40%, 50%, 60%. It mentions whether it's permanent in life or it's going to be reviewed, because when you have a disability certificate, especially in the minority, then it is generally reviewed after 5 years. But at a certain point of time, or at some instant, it's a disability for life also. So it mentions that, and lastly, it mentions that it has the photograph of the person, or the person with disabilities. So this is the mainly content of a disability certificate, that gives you details of type of disability, percentage of disability, whether life permanent, or it needs to be renewed after a certain year.
So, disability certificate can be used for any kind of benefits which you want to avail in terms of government schemes or travel, or even insurances. Some of the insurances are now available. So all these places, disability certificate becomes a very important document. So Jiten, let's now talk about what is the procedure one has to follow to avail this certificate.
Yeah. So now, to avail a disability certificate, the disability certificate is issued by the government hospital. Generally, when you get a medical certificate from private hospitals or on a private doctor, that is not valid for issuing the disability certificate. What valid is a disability certificate issued by the government hospital, the district hospital in your city. Now, what is the procedure? You have to seek an appointment with the doctor. Once you get an appointment, you have to submit the relevant documents.
You're, yeah.
So once you have got the appointment date, you have to go along with your child. The doctor assesses the disability, and after that assessment, the disability certificate is issued by the hospital. So that is a general process. Now this process also has moved online also, that as up till now, what happens that first you have to go to a doctor government hospital. But now there is a website called swavlambancard.gov.in, which is a website for issuing the UDID card. Through that also you can apply online for getting availing a disability certificate. So if your hospital, your city is mentioned on website, on the online on the website, you can apply for the disability certificate by submitting the relevant documents. You get an appointment date, and then you can visit the doctor on that appointment date. The assessment happens, and after that the disability certificate is issued. So this is the general process, which is where you will get the disability certificate.
Okay. And I think as a disability certificate, they will also get the unique number, right? Unique disability ID.
Not the disability certificate, because a certificate will disability certificate, is not going to mention any unique number. It has the
Okay.
name of the person, the disability, type of disability, permanent or temporary, and the photograph. So you know very well that who has, whose certificate it is. What you are probably mentioning is the UDID card that
UDID
we talk
card,
about.
yeah.
Yes.
So if that is the case, then how do I go ahead with the UDID card?
Okay, let me first, talk on what are the benefits of disability certificate, where all you require a UDID card is there. So UDID card in a way is replacing the disability certificate. When I say replacing, it means you do not need to carry the disability certificate anymore. With a single UDID card, you can do all those, avail all those benefits, or do, take all those actions where you would be requiring the disability certificate. Now, a UDID card is, we call it as a unique disability ID card. Now, if I have to just simplify it, much like we have Aadhaar, right? So UDID is meant for a person with disability. So a UDID card is like an I card, which will carry a unique number, uh, which is specific to that person, Plus, it will mention all the details what you see in the disability certificate. It will mention the type of disability, it will mention the percentage of disability, it will mention temporary or permanent, and so it will carry all those details which the disability certificate has, along with the unique number. So much like your Aadhaar number, with that Aadhaar number, when you show that Aadhaar to any anywhere, like for taking a mobile number or anywhere, and with that Aadhaar number, every data can be fetched. Similarly, with the UDID card, with that unique number on the ID card, the data, complete data of the person with disability can be fetched. So what happens that when you have a UDID card, you don't need to carry any other certificate or any other card related to your child. So with that UDID card, whether you are in India, tomorrow it's going to be there in abroad, in India, within any state, with that UDID card, you can travel across, and you
You're on the
the
mute.
UDID card is going to help.
Okay, but then what is the procedure for getting the UDID card, and is it necessary that we should avail disability certificate as well as UDID card?
Yes, so for availing the UDID card, you need to have the disability certificate. See, a UDID card, as you said, like an Aadhaar. But for the disability assessment, the disability certificate has to be obtained. The disability assessment has to be done. Now, disability certificate primarily is the assessment of the disability. To what extent, what type of disability. So all that is assessed. So disability certificate is still required to avail to get the UDID card. But you getting the UDID card is completely online procedure. Swavlambancard.gov.in is a website where you avail the UDID card. And if you go to the website, you need to upload the document, you need to upload the disability certificate and a UDID card, and you will get it through post. So it's a completely online process availing this UDID card.
Okay. So friends, the starting point is the disability certificate. Once you avail the disability certificate, then it is advisable that you apply for UDID card, and that's online. And the website link, I think one participant has already written that link in the chat box. You can just have a look at it, and definitely there are benefits of disability certificate, and there are benefits of UDID card. So, are there any specific benefits which are on and above the disability certificate if I have the UDID card?
See, as of now, what happens? There were few issues, before the disability bill was passed. Now, the one issue was the disability certificate was not acceptable across the state. If you are moving from one state to another state, the disability certificate was not acceptable. So that was a huge problem for families with a special needs child, because sometimes job is transferable. They are moving from one city to another city. They have to go for the reassessment again. Now, disability bill, when it was passed in 2016, removed that, and they made the disability certificate. Once you have made it, it is acceptable across the country in any state. Now, the disability certificate, previously, with a disability certificate, you can avail all the benefits, whether it's a government pension, whether it's availing any concession, whether it's availing, while you are traveling, or India or abroad. So you need to carry the disability certificate to show it, to the authorities, or to prove that you are, you have a child with special needs. Now, UDID card is replacing all these documents. When I say replacing, it doesn't mean it is replacing the importance of disability certificate. The disability certificate is still will be required, but you don't need to carry the disability certificate anymore. So if you carry the UDID card, you can avail all those benefits which were available through a disability certificate. So it replaces carrying multiple documents for your child. You can just carry a UDID card, and with that unique ID number, the data can be fetched, and all information with related to your special needs child would be available with that unique number. So with that UDID card, you can avail all those benefits which are available through disability certificate.
So the first actionable, ladies and gentlemen, is to get the disability certificate, and with that also apply for the UDID card. Now let's move on to the next actionable point, and that is the very important aspect of legal guardianship. So when the child is small, and then when he grows and he crosses the 18 years of age, legally he becomes a major. Okay, so the status changes from minor to major. Now in this case, what happens is, probably you need to do certain activities on behalf of your child. Now this doesn't come naturally. You have to obtain the legal guardianship certificate to prove that you are the legal guardian and you can do things on your child's behalf, or you are the person who is taking care of your child. So let's talk more about the legal guardianship, who can become the legal guardian and how to avail it. So Jitendra, let's come to this very important actionable for those children who have crossed the 18 years of age. Let's begin to understand the meaning of legal guardians. What are the legal guardianship and what are the benefits of having somebody, or is it mandatory for natural parents also, biological parents also, to get into the legal guardianship?
Okay, so the third aspect is the legal guardianship which you're talking about. Now, legal guardianship would be required at different stages of life. Uh, Even when the child is minor, now parents are considered to be the natural guardian till the child is 18 years of age. So, in practice, you do not need to obtain any legal guardianship certificate. You are considered to be the natural guardian, and you can make all the decisions on behalf of your minor child. The moment child turns 18, by law, you are no more a natural guardian of your child, because he or she is considered to be an adult now, and he can make a decision. But with special needs child, that support is always required. And so, therefore, once the child turns 18, even the parents also have to obtain the legal guardianship certificate to continue making all decisions, whether financial, legal, or any other decision on the child behalf. Now, that is one aspect where the legal guardianship certificate, even the parents will have to obtain when the child turns 18. The other aspect comes in the minority of the child. So if parents are there, parents are alive, they can make a decision. They are considered to be the natural guardian. But if parents are not there, okay, eventuality happens, and if parents are not there, then a legal guardian would be required to make decisions on the behalf of your minor child. So even in the minority, the parents will have to think who will be the next make decision on the child behalf. Now, this appointment of a legal guardian during the minority of the child also, and even when the child turns 18, because again the same question will come in that parents have taken the legal guardianship certificate, they are the legal guardian, but who after them? After them, who will take the decision on the child behalf? Who wants to take decision on the child behalf has to be legally authorized, and to get legal authorization is the legal guardianship certificate.
So how to apply for this certificate? What is the procedure to be followed?
Yeah, so the legal guardianship certificate is generally applied through the website of National Trust. Now, National Trust is a body which is set up by the government through a different act, wherein they are authorized, they are issuing the legal guardianship certificate. So, National Trust, the national website of National Trust has the complete procedure of applying online for the legal guardianship certificate. Previously, it is used to be offline. Now it has been made completely online. How does it work? Now, National Trust has appointed LLC, local level committees in different cities and different states. Now, when you apply online, so there is a form which you need to fill online. Once that form is submitted, you get a reference number. Now, this LLC is basically taking care of the complete legal guardianship certificate. So, what happens when you submit your application? LLC invites you, calls you for an appointment, where on the date of appointment, they assess the legal guardianship. So they will have a team, sitting there, who is going to assess that who is the person who is taking legal guardianship, whether he is the right person to be appointed as legal guardian. So you will be called for an assessment. Once that assessment happens, then you are issued the legal guardianship certificate.
So if the child is more than 18-year-old, we have to avail the legal guardianship certificate. Jitendra, depending on the disability, the type of disability, is the procedure different or it is all the same for every type of disability?
See, National Trust generally is mainly for four kind of disabilities: cerebral palsy, mental retardation, then you have autism, and then one more multiple disabilities.
Hmm.
Okay, so generally a lot of disabilities are covered under multiple disabilities. So now any disability which is covered under this, the procedure is to apply it to the National Trust. So National Trust takes care of the complete legal guardianship process. So you can fill up the form online on the National Trust website, and then you will be called for an assessment. After that, the legal guardianship certificate is issued. The second is, if it is not through National Trust, then in general, uh, where do you apply is to the SDM office, Sub-Divisional Magistrate Office. So they have a specific format where you fill up and apply for the legal guardianship certificate. In practice, if you see what National Trust is doing, so National Trust is basically taking care of that process, which in otherwise you would have gone through that SDM office and applying for the disability certificate. So through a separate act, the National Trust was appointed, wherein they take care of this complete process. Okay, so if it's not the National Trust, then SDM office, through them you have to apply for the legal guardianship certificate.
So initially, suppose parents have taken the legal guardianship certificate, and because of some event or because the parents are not there, some other person has to be appointed as legal guardian. Now, again, the same procedure has to be followed, or how the transition will happen from one legal guardianship to others.
Okay, so when you are applying to a National Trust for the legal guardianship, they ask you for an alternate guardian. So you have already provided an alternate legal guardian on the National Trust format. Okay, so when legal guardianship certificate is issued, the alternate legal guardian is always there. So when the alternate legal guardian is already there, then you don't have to go through that procedure again, right? Uh, if it is not there as an alternate guardian, or you are the only guardian, you are not able to provide the alternate guardian, then point is through a will. So you can write in the will that who is going to be the next legal guardian. And by law, will is a very valid accepted document. If you have write it in your will, the name of the person and who is the person who is going to be appointed the next legal guardian after you. So generally, we advise that you write it in your will, the appointing of the next legal guardian after you. So if it's not in the National Trust, or we say that it is the third layer, even after the alternate guardian which you have given under the National Trust, then it is through will where you can appoint the next legal guardian. So whether in child minority, specifically in child minority, or even after age 18 years of age, when you write a will, appoint a legal guardian in the will.
Yeah, so we have come across one more document which we are going to talk in the after some time, which is will, which is a part of the estate planning idea. So what we are talking about is we started with disability certificate as the first actionable. We also spoke about UDID card as second actionable, and the third actionable is the legal guardianship. Now let's move on to the next very important aspect of taking care of your child, which is nothing but money. That is the financial plan. So let's come to the financial planning exercise and how important it is for your special need child as well as for your overall, your overall family and your future. So let's talk a little bit about financial planning as an exercise, Jitendra. What is financial planning and how it is relevant or important, especially how we have to also consider the special need child's needs when you are doing the financial planning.
Okay, so before we go towards financial planning, I think let me mention something on legal guardianship, because this was a issue we have dealt with before, that even within your lifetime, so there is one that the change of legal guardianship happens after you, after your death. So then I would say it's an easier process because you have already appointed the legal guardian, an alternate guardian, whether in the document by the National Trust or whether in the will. But sometimes what happens specifically when you reach towards an old age, or maybe you yourself are disabled, permanently through any means, then uh, how can you change the legal guardianship? Because you might not be able to manage the affairs now. And we have come across few cases where parents initially were the legal guardian, but now they are at old age, they cannot manage the affairs. So the sibling or somebody else has to take the legal guardianship. Now the legal guardianship can be changed in certain instances, provided you can prove that yes, it is a very valid reason. So suppose the legal guardian is moving abroad, he's becoming an NRI, not going to stay in India. That is one reason. Medically, at old age, you are no more in a situation where you can manage the affairs. So, if those situations are there, you can apply for the change in legal guardianship, and you can apply to the National Trust. You can apply for the change in legal guardianship, and the legal guardian can be changed within your lifetime also, if those instances arises. But as I said, there has to be a valid reason for change of legal guardianship. Otherwise, the court or the National Trust won't consider it. If there is not valid reason. So if there are valid reason, the legal guardianship can be changed. So this is something which we came across during when we have met quite a few families. Now coming to the financial planning. So financial planning is very important. Why? One is because the expenses of a special needs child are much more, and it does create a financial burden on the families, because the finances has to be managed, the ever rising increasing cost, and specifically when there are more costs related to healthcare. The second, even in general financial planning, or we do when we manage our own finances, right? We do not have all the assets today. We do not have all the money today. We are going to accumulate in the future. But we need to know what is the amount of money which is required. We need to save for ourselves also, for the child also. No, for specifically for special needs child, a parent has to know that what is the lifetime cost care for the special needs child. So if parents are not there tomorrow, what is the amount of money which should be left for the child? And that can be done only when you are taking a financial planning approach, those lifetime cost estimation. Secondly, managing your investment, where the money should be invested, how much to accumulate at different life stages. You need to meet other goals also. There are other family members also. If sibling is there, then his education, his marriage. Now, if you look at this complete picture, then the finances can be in real mismanagement if you are not managing your finances efficiently. Okay, keeping the budget within your means, investing the money in the right asset classes, knowing how much money you actually need to save. All these can be done only when you are taking a financial planning approach. Second, with special needs child, there is so many life changes which happens year on year, especially when the until the child reaches 20 or 21 years of age. Up till then, your expenses are changing very frequently. Therapies you are increasing, you are decreasing. There are a lot of other things which are happening. So with so much change in your expenses, it is going to be difficult to manage if you are not following it on a periodic basis. So that's why a financial planning approach is very important. First, to reach towards your goals, to invest your money wisely, to manage your finances, to know how much money you are spending, to know how much money you require, how much legacy you should leave for the child and for other family members, and especially saving money for your retirement years, for your own retirement years.
Yes, so financial plan is a document which you should say, you should think of it as an ongoing document, because as mentioned by Jiten, our lifestyle changes, our life situation changes, and financial plan comprises of our whole family as a unit plus the special need children. Okay, so we have to consider, like in today's scenario, we have suddenly this coronavirus lockdown happening last 2.5 months. So many people are facing financial situations because of the job cut or heavy cut in the salary structure. So financial plan is a document which will help you to prepare for emergencies. It will ask you to assess the adequacy of your insurances, and it will help you to plan for your own retirement, for your other life goals, your children life goals, okay, and the need for the special need child, all the expenses, and how you want to give him the treatment, or how you want his rehab to happen. Everything you have to consider when you talk about the financial plan. So very important aspect is, it is not that once I have done the plan I have just forgotten about it. You have to revisit the plan because the life situation is changing. So in brief, Jitendra, can you just help people to understand what is financial plan, and how actually, what are the steps involved in preparing a financial plan?
Okay. So a financial plan, when we are talking about, is not a product. Okay, it's a process which you are laying down to ensure that you can manage your finances more efficiently. Why I'm saying in the process, because when you take a financial planning approach, you analyze your finances in completely. You are taking an approach and you are periodically reviewing that. So you are laying down a process for managing your finances. Now, what are the elements you cover and what is the general process of financial planning? So, first of all, when you are in financial planning, the firstly is identification of your goals. So, what are your goals? Right, short term, long term, medium term. Your goal will not only be special needs child, your retirement also, and along with that, you might want to start a business. You might want to do something else. So all these are financial goals. Any goal which will have a monetary aspect involved is going to be a goal which you have to meet. So identification of financial goal is the first step. And financial goals means identification means monetizing all your financial goals. The second is then analyzing your current situation. When I say current situation, how much money, what is your cash flow, what is your income, what is your saving, what are your expenses, how much you are saving. Now analyzing your cash flow helps that you come to know that how, whether the money you are saving or not is enough or not. Okay, so if there is a gap, then how to fulfill. So once you have these two elements covered, you come to know what are the pitfalls, what are the blocks in reaching a financial goal. When I say blocks, whether your saving is not enough, is insurance inadequate, whether estate planning is not complete, what are the legal planning you have to still do. So you know, you come to know which are the areas you need to plan. Once you have the pitfalls ready in front of you, then you design the strategies. So if like insurance is inadequate, you need to buy insurance. If investment has to be done, you design strategies. What is the asset allocation I should follow? What are the investment avenues? So like this, you design strategies for your meeting your life goal. And then once you design the strategies, you implement it. So you go on buying that insurance, you go on buying that investment, you go on buying any other product which is going to help you meet your goal. So you implement the strategies, and once you have implemented it, it's the first step you have taken, because as I said, there's going to be life long changes. It might change your cash flows, it might change your investment might not be doing well, it will not help you in reaching objectives, there might be lifelong changes. So once you implement the plan, you set up a periodic review process, and this review process can be quarterly, half yearly, annually, the way you want to set up. And once you set up that review process, then you change the financial plan as and when need required. So suppose after 5 years, suddenly your expenses have changed, your income has increased, or in the COVID situation, we are going through, your income has decreased. So if these kind of things comes in, you change your financial plan, you change your strategy. So that is a general step of financial planning we that should be followed. And when you follow these 6 steps, then I would say your financial planning is complete in that aspect.
So financial planning is a very important activity which takes care of your current financial situation, your current life situation. It asks you to think about where you want to go in the future. So that, what are the monetary requirements? So setting the goals, taking the current investments and money that you have, and trying to assign it to the future goals with the gap analysis. It also considers does, what is your overall risk appetite, and what kind of investment planning you can do so that your risk appetite is, the suitability of the investments is taken care of. So it is a very, so two things to remember: financial planning is an ongoing document. It has to be reviewed obviously as the life situation changes, and to reflect that changed situation, and you have to revisit the plan to see whether it is still on track. So just to take the recap, we started with a disability certificate, then we went to UDID, the unique disability ID card, then we went to the legal guardianship procedure, and now we have also spoken about financial plan. These four aspects are in place. The next important actionable item comes in terms of estate planning. So what is estate plan, Jitendra, and how is it important for us?
Okay, so estate planning basically covers designing strategies for distribution of your wealth within your lifetime and after your lifetime, and creating a legal framework to ensure that the lifelong care of your special needs child uh, uh, goes as it is, as you are managing it currently. So estate planning is very important because estate planning is answering a question: what after us? So what happens after us? What is the legal framework which can be uh, identified, or which can be formed, which will ensure that the financial affairs of your special needs child are managed without any hindrance, without any hazard. So estate planning pertains mainly to, as I said, answering this question: what after us? What are the legal framework, or preparing that legal framework, preparing a distribution of your wealth within your lifetime and post your lifetime. So estate planning is generally concerned with the uh, with the. I mean, I always say, when you are answering a question, what after us, you are actually preparing. You are doing an estate planning, because you are working on many fronts. You are identifying the residential needs of your child. You are identifying what happens to the wealth. You are identifying how this wealth is distributed. You are identifying the legal framework which can be created for your special needs child lifelong care.
So estate plan is a very important document. So you have created finance and you have started working on it, you have accumulated wealth, but it is equally important to see to it that this accumulated wealth is used by proper beneficiaries and in an appropriate way. So to ensure that, we have to be ready with the estate plan. Now, many a times we feel that estate plan is equal to will. Writing a will is good enough. But in this situation, especially in our situation where we have special need children, only will is not going to be enough. So, along with the will, there are many other aspects which also form the part of the estate. So, can you just tell Jitendra what all aspects are covered in estate plan along, because most we feel estate plan is will. What else?
Yeah.
Trust. Okay, but what trust? What are the types? You can just in brief then the details of that.
Okay. So yes, you rightly said. In most of the situations, no, even if we look at traditional planning, probably the will would answer the complete estate planning for us, because then we are preparing that who inherit the wealth after us and in what manner. But when you have a special need child, then will, I would say, is a starting point, because you have to prepare for a lifelong, for one generation. You yourself have to be prepared, right? But then you have to prepare for the lifelong care of your special needs child. Now the questions you need to ask is how the how you know the what are the legal framework which can be created, where the child is going to reside. Now if that legal framework is created, what are the structures, and when you're creating the structures, you are actually going into a larger discussions of those structures. What are the tax benefits, what are the decision making in those structures. From specifically we'll talk about the trust later on. And then what are the legal documents which will ensure that the wealth can be transferred to the trust and it doesn't go to any individual. Now this is specifically for special needs child, but along with special needs child, you yourself has to prepare for your older age. Now what happens in that period, if you are not able to meet the decision what happens. So if you do a situation, suppose if you are incapacitated, then who is going to make the decision? What is the legal framework for that? Uh, how you will communicate to other family members? How will you communicate to other people who are involved in your special needs child care? All these questions is going to be answered when you draw a comprehensive estate plan, because in a comprehensive estate plan you are looking at all these questions, you are preparing that legal framework, and then within that legal framework you are ensuring that that legal framework is placed today, or it is created tomorrow, but that legal framework ensures that the lifelong care of your special need child plus yourself also is being taken care. So that's why a comprehensive estate plan, before you go towards making a will or a trust, a comprehensive estate plan is important to identify all those legal documents, including the legal guardianship, which will be required uh, to address any legalities or any legal issues which you can foresee in your special needs child care.
So in the estate plan, actually we are talking about various aspects like writing a will, then legal guardianship, forming the trust, and also a very important document called letter of intent. So all these things together be comprises of estate plan. So now let us go step by step into each of them. Legal guardianship we have already taken into consideration. Now let's talk about will. So, what is a will, and do you need a legal expert to write the will, or what happens when somebody dies without a will?
Okay, so in writing a will, maybe you can write a will yourself. Yes, it's not mandatory that any expert has to be required to write a will. Also, it's not mandatory that will has to be written a certain format. If you write a will in your handwriting also, then it can take care of all the aspects, right? But why you might need a legal expert in writing a will? Because you are creating certain provisions like appointment of a legal guardian. What should be the scope of his role? And when you are appointing a legal guardian, who should be appointed the legal guardian? Whether it's blood relative, whether a friend can be appointed, in what manner, to what extent you should give the role to a legal guardian, whether the financial affairs should be the same managed or not. The second is then, when you are preparing a will, how the wealth distribution or the asset transfer to the trust happens or to other family members, how should that wealth to be distributed, in what manner. And when you are taking all these decisions, the legal expert might be required to guide you on the legalities of whatever decision you want to take, whatever provisions you want. You want to appoint somebody as a legal guardian, you might need a legal expert to take an opinion on why, whether he or she can be appointed. You might need an on whether if I want to make a certain framework or want to make a certain condition in the will, can it work? Plus, bringing out that legal language, especially when you have a special need child, then sometimes you might need a legal expert. So, uh, why I'm saying a legal expert? Because sometimes when you write your, if it's a simple will that I have to, give all the assets to my wife, it can be written in simple language. But when you have a special need child, you have to mention about his or her disability. You had to mention about provision of creating a trust, or whether you have created a trust or you want to create a trust tomorrow. You have to create a provision of appointment of a legal guardian, as I said, during minority and after minority. You want to create a provision for certain assets which you have earmarked for special need child, which you have earmarked for maybe for sibling. Plus, if you are giving more legacy to special needs child, what should be written in the will? So all these situations demand that you take an expert views, or you can take an expert help in writing your will. Why? Because ensure that there is no ambiguity in will, and it can carry all that provisions which you want for managing your special needs child affairs after your lifetime.
What happens if somebody passes away without writing a will?
Okay. Now, if somebody passes without a will, the first and important impact which will happen is that asset will not be transferred to the trust, because in the law there is no provision of a trust or an asset going to a trust. The provision of the law says that whoever are the legal heirs, the wealth should be distributed among them. Now, trust is not a legal hire. Trust is a legal entity you create. So, the biggest impact would be that the assets will not go to the trust. The second impact would be that the asset will go in a certain manner already decided by the law. Now, if you want to give more legacy to special need child because his care requires more money, that will not happen if you have not written a will. Because the law says, the succession law says, simply divide all the wealth into the legal heirs, among the legal heirs, an equal distribution should be done. And plus, your special need child also will inherit a good amount of legacy. He won't be able to manage it. Second, if you have not written a will, then who is going to be the legal guardian? Then you are keeping it open. And the law says that if you are not appointing, the court will appoint. Now, going to the court or probably, even in this distribution also without a will, getting a succession certificate to prove that you are the legal heir, it is going to be for everybody. Now, who will get the succession certificate for special need child? Because you were the legal guardian. Now, you haven't appointed a next legal guardian. So, all that legal hassles will come in if you are not writing a will. And to avoid all this legal hassle, it is important that a will should be written.
Okay, so will is very important because you want to, will is your own wish, your own desire to distribute your money to various beneficiaries. So if it has to happen as per your desire, then you have to write the will. Is it required for registering the will? Because many people say that registration is not mandatory, but some of the institutions they do ask for registration. What are your views about that, Jitendra?
Uh, See, by law, registration is not mandatory. Even a will written in a plain paper, or even in your handwriting also is very well accepted by law. But what happens that lately many organizations, especially like property department or other institutions, if you are going with a will written in a plain paper, then they are asking, the legal hires to go for a probate process. The probate process is basically going to the court to certify the will, to certify the legal hire, right? When you register the will, the situation of a probate is sometimes avoided, right? And registration of wills has other advantages also, like nobody can change the will, and only legally authorized people can only access the will through the sub registrar. So all those advantages are there when you register a will. So we advise that uh, it's better to register a will because you are going to avoid, as I said, there are a lot many legal hassles come in when the will is not registered. Especially now institutions are not easily accepting a will written on a plain paper and are not registered. Then you have to go towards a probate process, and a probate process takes a longer time. It's a minimum 6 month process, and the maximum depends on the proceeding of the court. So, uh, to avoid all those legal hassles, better to register a will.
Okay. So will is one of the very important aspect of estate plan. The next, everybody has questions in mind is about the trust. So when this trust should be formed, whether it has to be formed only after parents are no longer there to take care of the child, or is it that the living trust, that is while the parents are alive, they can float the trust, and how actually what is advisable in different situations?
Okay. See, the trust can be formed either way. Either you can form a trust in your living, that is today, and you can make it functional, or the trust can be formed through a will. That is, we call it a testamentary trust. So instead of forming it today, you create the provision of creating a trust in the will. So at your death, then the executor has to create a trust and move the asset to the trust, which you are as per the provision of the will. Now, in a testamentary trust, the only issue which will come in is that first, if will goes for a dispute, then the trust creation will stuck up. Plus, if it is going for a probate, the trust creation won't happen till the probate process is completed. And there are many other issues which might come up during the execution of the will. Now, till that happens, what happens to the special needs child financial affairs? Okay, because the trust won't be created, the trustee won't take the uh, assets into the custody. The assets cannot be taken into the custody till that process is completed, and you do not know how much time it takes to complete that process, especially if the will goes for a to the court. So to avoid all those hassles, it beneficial is that you create a living trust. Now, what is a living trust? Is a living trust is a trust which you create today and you transfer the asset to the trust in your lifetime, rather than leaving it completely on the will. So you form the structure today, okay, and the assets can be transferred in your living in any manner. You can transfer much like an SIP, you can transfer periodically, you can leave the sum of the asset to be transferred to a will. So you can decide how the wealth should be transferred to the asset, to the trust. But a living trust is more beneficial. Now, what happens in a living trust? When you create a living trust, the parents can become the initial trustees. So both the parents become the initial trustees. They manage the trust till their lifetime, and it's only after them the next line of trustees will take the responsibility. So the most beneficial aspect is that you as a parent, you yourself create the structure, you yourself manage it till you are living, and then you can appoint the next line of trustees as per your wish, whomsoever you think that can accept the role of a trustee.
So it is advisable to create a living trust, which happens in your own lifetime. So you can put the structure in place. You can see the viability of the structure that you have already designed in the living trust. You being the trustee yourself, you can be the best people to take care of the child and see how what are the, like, you can also then think that trustees after you, who should be the trustees after you, and what kind
Yes,
of qualities, isn't it? So
yes,
that is
yes.
also truly important.
Because what happens when you are living towards the will? Okay, so you are just creating that provision. Now, what happens? And to create a complete trust deed, you will have to create a complete trust deed which can run into n number of pages in the will, right? And who is going to be the trustee at that point of time when the will gets executed? How they will manage it affairs, right? And if the family members, if the family members are appointed as a trustee, they might be very new to to a trust structure as new as you are. So depending on them to take the role of a trustee suddenly, and managing the large amount of legacy which is transferred to the trust at your life, at your death, it's something you are really asking for. Maybe they might not be able to manage it. They might not be able to manage such a large legacy of the trust. So a living trust, as I said, the benefit is that you can start the trust, you can keep transferring the asset as you wish to. It's completely in your hand, and you once you make it functional, then you can even invite other family members to be a co-trustee to let them understand that this is how the trust is going to function, and this is what you have to do in the trust, so that they are very well aware that what role they have to play when they are managing the trust.
So for trust formation, of course, I think some legal help is required, because you need to create, or some professional help is definitely required. Uh, is it very
Yes.
costly to form the trust, and are there any yearly statutory requirement which one has to follow if they create a trust like this?
See, there is a one-time cost which will come in when you are forming the trust, and it can be anything between 50, 60K to going up to more than a lakh, depending what is the complexities involved in forming a trust. And there would be some running cost which will come in, like you might have to hire professional to manage the corpus of the trust. Then
Others who
probably
are not talking, please mute yourself.
So then you might have to hire a chartered accountant to file the ITR. But largely, when parents are managing the trust, the cost is on a very low side. It's only that when parents are not there and the next line of trustees are invited, or they take the responsibility, And if the professional trustees are involved, then the cost will increase. And till the parents are managing it, the cost would be on a lower side, as I said, because even the child is living at the along with the parent, so they can manage the cost. After the parent, the cost may increase. So there would be some running cost of the trust which will come in. So that's why the trustee role is very important, because the trustee has to see that all this cost is managed by the corpus of the trust. So where that money has to be invested, how this cost should be managed. So all the decisions are taken by the trustees, and that's why I said that even a family member who is going to be the next line of trustee should understand the role of a trustee first.
So living trust or trust per se is a separate legal entity. So there will be some legal aspects, taxation aspect, which are attached to trust. So there will be some ongoing cost, but it is worth the effort because it will give you the clear idea about how the trust is being formed, how it is running, and how it is actually operating. Because the ultimate objective of forming the trust is to take care of the child, and which can happen in the best way if parents themselves are the trustee, and they can even guide the next in line trustees, and they can actually groom them so that after them the following trustees can be more effective and taken care of. So
Yes,
this
and
was, yeah.
one more thing also, that the private trust you create uh, is largely concerned with the financial affairs. Okay, they won't be much managing the personal affairs of the child. That is the day-to-day living. That's where the legal guardian is important. That even when you have created a private trust, you still need a legal guardian who can take the personal decision of the child. His day-to-day living, the institution he has to be shifted, or the institution he's living. Then any issue which come on the personal side of the child, the legal guardian is going to take the decision. The trustee are not authorized to take decision on the personal affairs. So the trust would be largely concerned with managing the financial affairs, and the legal guardian still you will require to ensure that the personal affairs or personal decisions of the child can be taken.
Yeah, this is an important point to note, friends. Like, even if you have trustees, doesn't mean that legal guardianship is not required. The role and the responsibilities are totally separate and different. When parents are handling both the roles, it is combined. But when you talk about other trustees or people who are going to take care of the child after you, the roles are very distinct, right? The next important actionable and the important aspect in estate plan itself is durable power of attorney. So, what it is and when it is important.
Okay. Uh, Durable power attorney. Now, suppose if we consider a situation where, as a parent, you are incapacitated. Now, it may be due to old age disability, or it may be disability which arises earlier. Now, if you are incapacitated, but you are the authorized legal guardian of the child, then who makes the decision on the for the child on your behalf? Because you are the authorized person who is going to take the decision. Suppose signing of those bank accounts, right? You were supposed to sign those bank accounts, or you were supposed to withdraw the money, to do anything related with the bank, because you are the authorized legal guardian. But if you reach to that situation, then what happens? So much like in power of attorney, you appoint somebody to manage your financial affairs even when you are well. A durable power attorney or a health power attorney works in a situation when you are incapacitated. Then you appoint somebody to manage the affairs if you reach to that situation. So a durable power attorney will start when you are incapacitated, whereas a general power attorney stops if the principal, or the person who has created that power attorney, he is incapacitated. So durable power attorney is largely for those situations where you are the authorized legal guardian, but you yourself in a situation you are not able to take decisions.
So, it is important when you feel that if I'm not able to take any decisions, or if I'm not in a capacity to handle the special needs child's decision making, then what will happen? Their durable power of attorney will come in the picture. So we have seen many actionable items, friends. We have started with disability certificate, then we went to UDID card, then we went to legal guardianship, Then we spoke about the financial plan. Then we came to the most important aspect of estate plan. We spoke about will, whether it should be registered, not registered. We also spoke about the trust, the living trust, the private trust, when it is to be formed, whether it can be formed through the will. We spoke about that. And now we spoke about durable power of attorney. And now we are coming to the last actionable for today's session, and which is a very, very important aspect, which actually forms the basis for many of these earlier activities. Okay, and that is letter of intent. So some of you must have heard about it. Some of you must have also written about it. But the thing is, it is very important because that is the base. Okay, on which, whether it is financial plan, whether it is estate plan, it all takes information and data from your letter of intent. So let's talk about what is letter of intent and what are the contents which are covered in this letter of intent. Jitendra, can you just elaborate about it?
Yes. So letter of intent, let me, ask some questions. What happens if you leave, your child to say maybe a neighbor to a family member, say for 24 hours, okay, or say for 4 hours. So what instruction will you give it to them? Now, what instruction will you give it to them again if you are leaving your child for say 48 hours? Now extend this. What instruction can you give it to the next guardian or the trustee if you are not there tomorrow? Because they do not know about your special need child as you know. Even within parents, one parent spend the complete lifetime in earning, right? One parent spend the complete lifetime in managing the personal affairs. What will happen to in the situation where the person who is the parent who is managing the personal affairs 24 by 7 is not there tomorrow? Is the parent who has been earning money, who has been doing the job, who has been on job, you know even we have seen that even though in those situations there is a difference in understanding the personal affairs of the special needs child. That's where a letter of intent helps. A letter of intent is a detailed instruction, is a reference you are creating for the next legal guardian, for the line of trustees, or for anybody who is involved in your special needs child care, especially after you. So and that's why it becomes a very important document, because you know everything as a parent, you know about your special needs child, but what happens after you? Uh, I always take an example. Consider a situation where legal guardian, you have appointed a legal guardian, but you haven't told him anything, and he has not been involved in managing the special needs child affairs. Something happens to the parent, and your child is already say 40 years of adult person. What happens in that situation? The legal guardian suddenly realizes that he has to manage the affairs of a 40-year-old adult for the lifelong, on which probably he or she is not aware of. In that situation, the letter of intent helps. The letter of intent is a detailed document you write about. Now, what do you write in a letter of intent? You are writing about details of all the members, family members, friends, neighbors, all the details of those persons who are going to be involved in your special needs child affairs. You are also going to write about people whom you do not want to be involved in your special needs child affairs for some or other reason. Second, you are providing details on the medical or the health issues of your special needs child, right? Starting from the medical history up to the current medical situation, up to what have worked in the past, what has not worked in the past, what is not going to work in a certain situation, what legal guardian or a trustee or anybody who's managing the child's personal affairs should do. Second, you write in a letter of intent about the life of a child, his daily activities, his likes, his dislikes, his behavior in certain instances, the change in behavior. How have you managed his behavior in those kind of situations? How do you want the child, behavior should be managed? How do you want the child should be treated by the trustees, by the legal guardian? Then you write your vision. What is your vision? What do you want from the trustees? What do you want from the legal guardian? What do you want from the other people? And then giving contact details of all the people, starting from doctors, family members, professionals, anybody. So you can understand you are writing such a detailed document because you're preparing a document where even the legal guardian has needs some information, needs a contact detail of, say, suppose your doctor also, a regular doctor where you visit on a regular basis. From that document they can know. Plus they see any kind of behavior, any change in behavior which has happened in the past. From that document they will come to know what is it exactly. Now, as I said, as a parent you know everything about your child, but the next legal guardian won't be knowing, or the trustees won't be knowing, or anybody who might be involved in the special need childcare won't be knowing. So you create an instruction manual which helps other people also know, okay, this is how the thing has to be done.
So, letter of intent is why it is a continuity document, because it talks about your child's important events, life events, his current situation, what is the medical condition that he has, what help he requires. And I am sure Jitendra will let us talk about also one more very important section which we normally write in letter of intent is the future of the child. What is your
Yes,
vision? Yeah, that
yes.
maybe you can just elaborate a little bit more about that also.
Yeah, so as a parent, you have a certain vision for your child, right? You want the child, should be managed in a certain manner. The child should be living with a family member, right? If the legal guardian wants to take a certain decision, he should be, he or she should take decision in a certain manner, right? So as a parent, you have a life vision for your special need child. Now that vision, the next legal guardian, trustee, or any other family member won't be able to know if you have not penned it down. It's your wishes for your special need child. We also say letter of intent as a memorandum of wishes, because this is what you want, and you want the next legal guardian, the trustees, that ensure that this thing should be taken care of when you are managing the special need child affairs. So what happens that when a guardian, the next legal guardian, he reads their memorandum of wishes, and any decision which he or she is going to take will always keep your wishes in mind. This is what you wanted, so this is what going to happen. You want that your child should not be shifted to an institution but should stay with any family member, or your child should be treated in a certain manner, right? All this, your vision, your wishes, you write it in letter of intent. And in the trust we have created, in many of the trusts even we have referred to the letter of intent, that when a trustee is making a decision, please kindly refer to the letter of intent for memorandum of wishes, for knowing what the parents want it. So it's basically your wish you are writing, and which legal guardian, trustee, or anybody, any other family member, they have to take it note for when they are taking decisions.
So this is precisely the reason why letter of intent is always visited when you are preparing the financial plan, because how much to accumulate money for your child and what will be your retirement plan, all these things are interrelated and they are all coming from your vision, because many a times people also take decision to relocate. Okay, so one may say that okay, by the time I become 55 or 60, I'm approaching my retirement or I'm retired. After that, probably I will move on and I'll go to my native place, because by then my child will be, say, 30-year-old, and I will have better support system there. Or it can be any other way which you want to think about your special need child, and that
Yes,
depends, that has monetary repercussions on your financial plan. So that's
yes,
why it is very much important, even when you are forming the trust, how much corpus that trust should have. All these aspects will depend on what is your vision for your child, and that's why letter of intent becomes a very important document. That is primary document, you can say, which you have to start your activity along with the disability certificate when you want to start on the actionables that we have discussed today. We have to help you out, we have e-course on letter of intent. Please visit our website. We have a 10-day very good course which has been used by people, and there you get videos. We have shared a template, and at the end of the 10th day you will have at least the draft document of letter of intent ready with you. So it can be very helpful. So those who are interested, please do visit the website and get the information and take opportunity to enroll for it. So these are the actionables that we have seen during last 1 hour and 15 minutes or so. So now we are, you know, let us have some interactive sessions, and please feel free to ask the questions, and let's discuss the answers. So some of the questions, Jitendra, which are asked till now,
Yes.
and so the question is financial planning. I think Mr. Ashok Shah, you would like to ask the question yourself, sir?
You can read it out. So,
Okay, so financial planning does not go as you have planned because of changing scenario, interest rate, market situation. So what exactly is your question, sir, here?
like as you rightly mentioned already, that we need to review every time to make it suitable for what your goals are.
Okay,
That
That
has already been answered.
okay.
And especially during that COVID
because
situation,
of
it has
that,
gone all
yeah.
the way down.
Yes, that's why financial planning is important, because once a financial plan is prepared, you have already designed some strategies for achieving your lifelong goals, and it is a lifelong goal of maybe 40-60 years of your special needs child life. But as we are seeing in the current scenario how things changes, right? It can be due to situations which are beyond your control. It can be due to your family situations, or many other situations will arise which will change your finances. To accommodate all those changes, to ensure that you are on track with related to your finances, this financial planning approach is important, where you can review your finances on a periodic basis.
Yeah. Thank you.
So one question is there, like you had mentioned in the disability certificate that
Yeah.
40% or more disability. So is less than 40% not considered as disabled?
Okay, yes, that's true. As per in India, 40% is considered to be the benchmark disability. So, if assessment comes where the disability is less than 40%, then he or she is not considered to be a disabled, and disability certificate is not issued. So, 40% is the benchmark disability, is the minimum. I would say percentage where you get the disability certificate. Any percentage below than that is not considered a disabled, so you do not get a disability certificate.
Very much right.
This okay. And this certificate is temporary or is it permanent?
See, there are both these. Generally, minority में you know you have to review it after every 5 years. Sometimes even in minority, if the disability is assessed as permanent, it will remain lifelong. It is written as permanent, but it is written as temporary, where it need to be reviewed at a certain after a certain periodic interval. And largely, most of the disability certificate, once the child attains 18 years of age, they all make it permanent.
Right.
Okay. Now, Dr. Bhavana wanted to know what is the procedure to get railway concession? I think they have found it difficult to get it for last 4 years.
Railway concessions, yes, they are already specified. Railway concessions are there. They have got a specified format. You have to apply, to the railway to avail the concessions. So they have already a procedure laid down, where you have to apply, fill up the form. You have to apply with the disability certificate, while you are traveling, and then you get a concession. I'm not, because I have seen many parents do get that concession. I'm not sure if you have applied and if you are not getting the concession. So, is your question is that last 4 years you have applied and you are not getting that concession?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, yes, sir.
what is the response you are getting from the railway?
They told that they lost their form.
They lost the form.
I filled again and again. I filled second time, but not response any. Not getting any response.
Jitendra ji.
Yeah, Dr. Ashok.
Aditya, wait. Acha, my experience is like that. Many of the railway person are not aware of the things that the concession can be given to the disabled person.
Hmm.
Twice, even Aditya went with my boy for the railway pass in a local. First time he
Hmm.
was denied, so he took regular pass. Second
Hmm.
time, he always went with a disability certificate. The person
Hmm.
on the counter was aware of it. He
Hmm.
gave the concessional pass. So it
Okay.
all depends on the person who is sitting at the counter who
Yes.
issues the thing.
I do agree with that.
They,
I think lot of these issues, Dr. Bhavna, lot of these issues. Uh, if you are not getting it, if you fill up a form, next time I would advise take a picture and probably report it to the higher authorities. The railway concession certificate is given along with the IQ certificate. Okay, so that might be there, but if you are not getting the certificate by the railway, and the reason you have mentioned is not a reason to give the certificate, they are losing it again and again. Probably they are not very serious, the person who is handling this is not very serious, so I think you can take it up with higher authorities and you
Okay.
should get it.
I think there is one legal document from the railway. What are the
Ah,
concessions to be given to the various people and various
yes,
categories, including disability, cancer patient, TB patient, old age, and all.
yes, yes, it
Format,
is
if
there.
somebody wants, I can share it so that they can take it with them.
I think that will be good. You can share it, and as I said, the
Yeah.
procedure. I mean, yes, it depends on person to person and state to state. Also, sometimes these difficulties arise. But I think right way to approach is that if the person handling it is not, helping you out, you take it a matter with the higher authorities. And largely, if last resort is always the disability commissioner who is always there, to resolve. We have seen many times the issues are raised with disability commissioners and things get resolved.
But
Okay. Thank you,
circular is
sir.
from the railway itself.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay, another very good question by Dr. Ashok again is, can in trust it can be mentioned that it should take care of the parents in the old age along with the special child, and before finally going into the special child after death.
So
Yes,
trust,
sir.
Otherwise, I think he wants beneficiary to be, should include the.
parents
But only
also.
thing now, if the trustees are, yeah, if the trustees are parents, then again the beneficiary also be the trustees.
So see, the problem does arises when you have the trustees also the beneficiary. So if you create a trust where you are the beneficiary also in the old age, I would advise not to have it in the same trust. If if you want a trust to be created for your old age, you can create a separate trust. So that can be done. Though you can be the beneficiary in one trust. You and your special child can be the beneficiary in one trust. But if you are the trustee also, and you are the settler also, and you also become the beneficiary also, I would advise not to do that. There's certain issues which does arises. So maybe special child trust should be kept completely separate, and you can create a separate trust for yourself also. That can be created. You can create any number of trusts. There is no issue in that. There is no legal issue. There is no income tax issue in that. Okay. But so I would advise, if you want a trust for your old age, especially, create a separate trust for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to know, do you know Dr. Hari Shetty?
Yeah.
Dr. Hari
I haven't,
Shetty, second.
I haven't met him yet, Doctor. Oh,
Yeah. Tomorrow will be webinar of Dr. Hari Shetty in Facebook of live video. So
okay.
I just wanted to know that what is your financial planning? That I got some UDID certificate and
Hmm.
I've got a railway traveling alone itself.
Hmm.
So how do I travel alone? No, Jitendra sir, will you just show me how to travel alone with a car, train, everything else?
I
Will
think
you,
Aditya will take up it in another webinar. We'll surely do it. Okay. Since you have
Aditya,
requested it, we'll surely do it in another webinar. We'll do it.
Aditya, it will come with the practice.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Jitendra sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So one more question is there. Is durable power of attorney, can it be changed if person is becomes incapacitated, or you get doubt about his intentions? And is this POA required to be registered or legally stamped?
Yes, generally power attorney are are made on stamp paper. So this is going to be, it's a power attorney only. We call it, the way power attorney needs to be registered on a stamp paper. The similar way this durable power attorney would also be done. Okay, whether this can be changed, so you can put certain conditions. See, when you are writing a power attorney, you can always create conditions. What happens in that situation? So if you create conditions, then it won't be executed in that situation.
Okay. So
You mean I just wanted
yeah.
to clarify that if the person is incapacitated, then we have to
Yeah.
make another power of attorney, or if you, in case we want to change the person's name in the power of attorney, then we have to make another power of attorney and discard the first one.
You will have to discard the first one, sir.
Oh,
And is it required to be registered? I don't think so, isn't it?
No, power attorney generally get notarized.
Yeah. So I hope your questions are answered, Dr. Ashok.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much. I think Dr. Ashok has already attended our letter of intent e-course, and he's happy about it. So thank you so much for your encouragement, Dr. Ashok. Thanks a lot.
And every parent should attend it. I could complete it almost 70% only because of the module he has sent me in last 10 to 15 days time. So the 30% is remaining because of my own delay of forming a will and task trust. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Ashok.
so much. So anybody else has any question, please go ahead and ask. We have a
Yes.
few more minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Aditya.
In
Yes,
7 days,
Aditya.
I met Shreya Jain, because Shreya Jain did Zoom meeting with presentation PowerPoint. So we had did webinar of Shreya Jain with Chitra here, because Chitra here made presentation with Shreya Jain, because he met Shreya Jain at Chandigarh. Yeah, Jitendra sir, you know Shreya Jain?
Yeah, I know Shreya Jain.
Yeah, okay. Because we had did a Zoom meeting with Shreya Jain, because I did
Okay.
because I did bank account from here, how to open a bank account. Chitra here said that you can open a bank account. You already got UDID certificate. Yeah, that is why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Aditya,
Yes.
you are supposed to ask the relevant question.
Irrelevant question. Yeah, sorry,
Then
Dad.
what?
I was in irrelevant question. Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. Yeah. Because I didn't remember. No.
It's okay.
Anything.
It's okay. It's
It's
okay.
okay. It's okay.
It's okay,
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
I know
But
which
that's
Shilpa
fine.
was.
He has reiterated the importance of UDID, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Because of UDID, you could open the bank account.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Great. Yes, madam. Yeah, madam, you have some question. Yes, madam. You're please unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes. Please
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
can
I'm Mrs. Sulabha. Just now Aditya Shah spoke about bank account. I would
Yeah.
like to know whether bank account can be opened for any special need individual independently, or he should have somebody along with the special person.
Ideally, it should be opened under the legal guardianship, because what happens is, individually, when you are opening it individually, a bank account, you need to be sure that he can make all those money decisions, because operating a bank account, knowing about the debit, credit, all those decisions he will have to make. So when he is operating a bank account, he should be aware on all those. If he is not able to, right? So then, and if you already have the disability certificate, right? Ideally, we advise that open it under a legal guardianship.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can it be with a joint account? Both the signatures
Sir,
are
joint
required.
account में problem ये है कि the second holder is only for the operational perspective after the first holder is not there. Okay.
One
But
minute,
with the,
Jitendra,
yeah.
1 minute. Sulba madam, can you please mute your thing if you are done with the
Yeah,
question?
sure. Sorry about it. 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Jitendra, please go ahead.
See, Dr. Ashok, the problem in joint account is like both can operate the account, right? And it's
Yeah.
the first holder who has the main right. So he or she is going to take all the decisions, and he has to sign. Now, in case of special need children, the signing can differ tomorrow. And opening, what the banks generally do, we have seen that if the signing is a problem, what they do, they open account with a thumb impression. But that's not the right way. Because it's a decision making, right? Knowing about related to anything related to money, so you have to see to what extent your child is able to make those decisions. If we understand a bit of it but cannot make all those decisions, cannot utilize the bank account in a right manner, then don't open a joint account or an individual account. Better to open an account under the legal guardianship, because then you are authorized to operate the account. In a joint account, you are not authorized, right? I mean, anyone or survivor, that is an operational right, but it's the first holder who is authorized to do all the things. Okay, so
In that
the
case,
legality of joint account is completely different.
in that case, the joint account in the name of a child who is a special need, can it be open with a disability certificate because awaiting the guardianship?
No. Disability certificate, with disability certificate, you can open under a legal guardianship. So they will require legal guardianship certificate.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, or we are coming to the end of the webinar? Okay, thank you so much. And stay tuned. We'll be coming out with some few more webinars. Jitendra, you would like to talk about it? Next few webinars topics?
Yes, we are this webinar series we have been running from April. Just one announcement. We are going to come out with a webinar maybe in July. We are bringing out experts now. So we'll be bringing lawyers, experienced lawyers who have worked on private trust for the last 17-20 years and who have worked with special need trust. So we are going to do a webinar with them. Plus, we are going to, in the future, we are going to do webinars with many families who have already implemented all these 8 of the aspects we have spoken today. So we are going to have their experience. Plus, we are going to cover other aspects also in our coming up webinars. So we all these letter of intent we have already done in the past. We have done insurance planning. We are going to cover investment planning in the next future webinars. We are going to cover will also in detail, the trust also in detail. So we are going to cover all these aspects in the webinar. So Plan Special Needs is our website, and with our Plan Special Needs, we have got a Facebook page. So like that Facebook page, and you will be tuned to getting any notification from that. We generally, whenever we are doing a webinar, we announce it, and we are going to, so you can see that announcement. You can attend the webinar and understand all these aspects in detail. We are going to so we are going to, in the future, we are going to bring in experts. We are bringing in disability experts also. As railway concessions or any other concessions, we are going to talk with experts also in the future of these webinars. So this webinar series 2020 we are going to do in different aspects. We'll do with a lot of experts. I am going to talk on many other aspects in detail. So just stay tuned, like our Facebook page, and connect to us, and we will notify you whenever we are doing the next webinar.
Jitendra ji, one more
also
request.
Yes, Dr. Ashok.
Yes,
Yeah, can I continue? Yeah.
Yes.
Will there be a webinar for financial planning of a trust amount? The intention is like this, that many times we think that only from the interest or whatever remains and the corpus remains like that till the child leaves, and then the corpus goes to some other trust or something like that. Instead of that, some financial planning in a way that if the child survives till 75 or 80 years, the amount goes on reducing till he survives. so that he
Yes.
utilizes the entire amount rather than going to somebody else after his death.
Yes.
So that planning some webinar or some talk on that.
Okay. Yes, we will do. Will cover. See, there is one more thing that all of you who have attended the webinar, if you want a certain aspect to be covered in a webinar, and if we see that lot of requests is coming on any topic from from lot of parents, then we will do a separate webinar for on that topic. Okay. So
Thank you.
just keep pour in your request. Just write to us that this is the aspect you want to see. In one of the webinars, we will ensure that we cover those aspects, or we do a separate webinar completely. Okay. Lot of parents here are asking for a Facebook page. It's Plan Special Needs. With that name, you will get the Facebook page, and even if you visit our website planspecialneeds.com, you can see all our Facebook, Twitter, all the links are mentioned there. So just and you subscribe to any of our services. Like 2 Minute Tip we are doing, a letter of intent if you subscribe to, or any other the regular notification you subscribe to, you will be getting all the notification from our site.
Thank you.
Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending and being participative. Please, as Jitendra mentioned, please do visit our website and keep writing to us in case you want us to cover any more specific topics. If the request is coming from most of the parents, definitely we will create the webinar out of it. Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Shilpa.
Jiten.
Thank you all.
Okay.
PPT of today's webinar. Dr. Bhavna, we are recording this webinar, so you will all the participants will get a recording of this webinar. We will be sending you the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Have a nice weekend. Bye.